All right, let's talk about voice work and spell work. I'm guessing you've heard those terms thrown around, right? Maybe in movies or books, and they usually come with this vibe, a whole mix of mystery, a little bit of fascination, and, maybe even some fear. So what's the real story behind these ancient practices? Let's dive in and see what's really going on.
So, what are we really talking about here? Are these things powerful, ancient tools for healing and finding yourself? Or is there something more to all those warnings we sometimes hear? That is the big question we're going to tackle together today.
First up, let's get into voice work. The name itself, I know it sounds a bit mystical, but the idea behind it is actually something we all kind of get.
Okay, so at its heart, voice work is all about using your voice on purpose. I mean, think about it. We use our voice pretty much unconsciously all day long. But this is different. This is about consciously taking all its parts, your tone, your pitch, the actual breath that powers it, and using it as a very specific tool to create a shift, an emotional, energetic, or even a spiritual one.
And it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing either. It really branches out. You've got healing voice work, which is all about using sound to soothe and balance your body. Then there's chanting or mantras. That's for focusing your mind, shifting your energy. Vocal activation is a bit different. It's more about releasing all that pent-up stuff through really raw, primal sounds. And then resonant spell work. That's where the voice becomes the actual vehicle for sending a clear spoken intention out into the world.
And what's so cool and what this slide shows is that we all do this without even thinking about it. Have you ever hummed to yourself to calm down when you're anxious? Well, that's a form of healing voice work. Chanting Om in a yoga class, or repeating a sacred phrase from the Arcana tradition like Na La Kure. It's all part of the same idea. Even whispering affirmations to yourself in a mirror, that's you intentionally using your voice to create a change. Okay, so that idea of using your voice for a specific intention, well, that leads us right into our next topic, spell work. And just like with voice work, the name can sound pretty intimidating, but when you look at the definition, it's actually very deliberate. So, what is spell work? It's the art of directing energy. And the key ingredients are always the same. You need a clear outcome you want, your focused intention, and then usually some kind of language or symbol to anchor it all. I really love that the source material calls it a spiritual technology. It just frames it so well, not as something vague and spooky, but as a precise, repeatable process. And just like voice work, you've got different spells for different things. There are spells for protection, for blessing, for cleansing out negative energy, or for manifesting a goal. The source also makes a point to mention binding spells, which, yeah, those are often seen as ethically pretty complicated, mostly because they can mess with someone else's free will, which is a big no-no in a lot of traditions. This slide really brings it down to earth, showing how spell work can just be a simple personal ritual. Ever written down a wish and then burned it to release that energy? Yep, that's spell work. Lighting a candle while you set an intention for your day, or whispering a secret phrase for strength like Kia Yasa Novinorda? These are all really tangible, grounded examples. Okay, so we've broken down the what of voice work and spell work, but we're still left with that big, looming question we started this whole thing with. Are these practices, when you get right down to it, evil? It's the question that just hangs in the air for so many people when you talk about this stuff.
And you know what? The source material is incredibly clear on this one. The answer is a hard no. These practices are not inherently evil. They're described as tools for spiritual focus. And in most traditions that use them, they're approached with a real sense of reverence, of care, and with the goal of healing.
And this gets us to the most important point of all, the tool versus the intention. Think about a hammer, right? You can use a hammer to build a beautiful house, or you can use it to break a window. The hammer isn't good or evil. It's just a hammer. Its impact depends completely on the person holding it. Well, it's the exact same principle here. Let's look at a real-world example just to make this crystal clear. In Arcana spirituality, they don't even use a word that translates to spell. They call these practices resonant devotion or thread alignment. Their whole philosophy is built on the idea that the voice is sacred and that it is only the practitioner's intention that decides where that energy goes. That's it. Okay, so let's wrap this all up. Let's pull everything we've talked about together into one final clear summary. This table just lays it out perfectly. The key difference here is really about focus.
Voice work is mainly internal. It's about using the tools you already have, like your breath and your tone, for your own healing and clarity. Spell work, on the other hand, is usually more external. It's about using tools like words, objects, and gestures to manifest something or give a blessing out in the world.
So, at the end of the day, if these ancient practices are just neutral tools, then all the power and all the responsibility is in our intention. Whether it's through a quiet hum, a focused thought, or a whispered word, our intention is the force that shapes everything. Which really leaves us with the most important question of all: how are you going to focus yours?